Hey everyone, you're tuned into InfoQuench with Jeff.
And Amy. Join us as we talk about anything.
And everything.
All the stuff that makes life interesting.
So let's get to it. Hey everybody, and welcome to InfoQuench. I'm your host, Jeff.
And I'm Amy.
And this podcast, we're going to be talking about
16 habits of highly productive people.
There's only 16? How is there only 16? I thought that there would at least be 20.
They're so productive, they've, got it boiled down to just 16. Actually, I just pulled out 16 of various articles. I read through a lot of articles of productivity, so I picked out 16 that I felt were important and actually threw in a few of my own productivity tips.
Okay, and there's 16 habits of what?
Highly productive people.
What constitutes a highly productive person?
Somebody who accomplishes a lot.
Accomplishes like things like,
they
in
complete
business
tasks,
and stuff, or could it be somebody that doesn't have a job and is just like, really, really good at just doing things?
Yeah, I guess you're producing some sort of output, so whatever that might be.
So these would be tips that those.
If you're just like a rabbit who's highly prolific and you're having lots of little baby rabbits, then also you'd be highly productive.
And how are these baby rabbits made? Anyway, go ahead.
I don't know if you did the math, but with 16 habits in 30 minutes, we've got to get going on these on this numbered
16
list.
16 habits in 30 minutes.
So some of these are office specific. I work in an office environment, and I think probably a lot of our listeners do too. But I think even if they don't relate specifically to your work, you can adapt them.
Office environment.
And some of them are more generic, just in terms of everyday life. So let's start with the first one. The first one, in terms of habits of highly productive people, is they focus on the most important tasks first. So when you look at any to-do list,
right,
you probably have some that are a little bit more important than others.
What if you're so confused you don't know which one is most important? That must be really hard for some people to categorize.
Well, it is, and I actually have a tip around that. That's further on in our numbered list.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
So I'm glad you brought that up, Jeff.
Thank you. I have a tendency to do that.
But when you're looking at your task list, if you get focused on just trying to check off to-do items, I think as humans we'll have a tendency to go for the easy ones because we love to just check that box of it being done. But as far as, being productive and doing those high value tasks, it is important to focus on the most important tasks and getting those done.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm just saying, remember in a previous podcast, I brought up the fact that I make to-do lists and then I just forget to bring the list.
Or like grocery lists and things, you mean?
Grocery lists and stuff like that. And so what if you're writing all the most important things to do on a to-do list and then you just lose the list? That happens a lot.
Well, then we'll have to listen to some episode we do on organizing. Organizing yourself.
KonMariing your to-do list.
Put your list in your phone.
Right.
That's an easy way. I often make use of the notes.
Sorry, that was a huge aside.
Well,
I've never done that before. Like gone and talk about something.
No, I know it completely threw me off. I'm not used to it at all.
I might do it again. I don't know. We'll see.
But there is a notes app in most people's phones or iPads.
Highly utilized.
You usually have your phone with you, so a great place to put your high priority items might be just to tuck it into the notes app of your phone. And the idea behind this too is that at the end of the day, even if it's a random Tuesday and you had one important task that you had on your to-do list and you accomplished it, you can feel productive about that day.
Yeah.
You know that you've done something.
Absolutely.
Something you can hang your hat on. So the idea is maybe even pick even 1 to 3, and you can think about those maybe the night before or the morning of, and just have them in your head that, no matter what, these are the things I'm going to prioritize, and do those first. Get them off the list.
Do you have to have that satisfaction of checking off when you do it? A lot of people do. I
love a good checkbox.
Yeah, you like a good checkbox for sure. You do. It's like done that. I remember like you were very meticulous when we went through the whole KonMari.
I know you came across one of my little KonMari checklists.
Oh yeah, I did.
Recently.
Just not too long ago, just a few days ago. That's right. But I don't know what number our podcast that is, but check back in our podcast. We did 2 or 3 podcasts on the KonMari
right, that was early days.
That was early days. The audio quality probably isn't as good as it is now. Listen to that baritone voice.
I know. Gee, I hope the audio quality is good on this episode. You just really set the bar.
Me too.
Number 2 in terms of habits of highly productive people is they are often early risers. And
Not me. Sorry.
I guess you're not highly
Well, I
productive.
work overnights. I can't really.
Do you consider yourself a highly productive person, Jeff?
I don't know. I guess a little bit because, like we talked about earlier, what is a highly productive person?
Right.
Well, it's whatever is prioritized in your own mind, right? I mean, if I feel like I'm being really highly effective making art all day, then
If you're down in the art hole,
I'm down in the art hole,
churning out
all
the
day.
old monoprints,
Yeah.
then yeah, no, well, definitely. I mean, that's a
Or
good
like,
example of productivity.
Yeah, productivity seems to be like, well, I mean, in this respect, it's like a business atmosphere. It's like, working in cubicles and stuff, right?
But
How
not,
to be.
but not always.
No,
I mean,
not always, but
even in your,
that is exactly my point. Like it doesn't always have to be, like administered to like a business or like how to be highly effective, like get all kinds of things done in a day, like in a business sense. It can be like I did a painting and I shoveled the snow from the front yard and just all that kind of stuff.
well, that's right. Even if you're, if you're a stay-at-home parent and you're, and that's what your job is, then
I think that makes me an underachiever, though. Now that I think about it, because I could be conquering the world, but I'm just like doing little things, but thinking, hey, I'm being highly effective today, getting all this little things done. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, I talk about the work environment, but yes, if you're a stay-at-home parent, there's everybody has tasks and things they need to accomplish in their life,
yeah.
whether it's, making appointments or doing things around their own household.
Yeah.
All of those things are on the to-do list. So the idea of productivity can apply to that as much as it can apply to an office environment.
For me, one of the most valuable things you can do in life is just to do the things that you most enjoy. Like, I'll go back to my example earlier, like, creating art. Like, I absolutely love doing that. It makes me feel alive. Whatever you can do that makes you feel alive, as long as it's not murder, do it.
Yeah, because if it's murder, it might make you feel alive, but it makes the other person feel very dead.
Yes, it does.
And
But you know what I'm saying.
I have no idea what that has to do with productivity. Aside from the fact that your mind is clear, you do not worry about
what I'm
things
saying,
like
though, is there are
productivity.
limits to things that you should do that you enjoy.
I lean away from the mic while I laugh.
I know. Sorry.
Early risers, yes. So highly productive people are often early risers, and that allows you to get the things that you probably should value most out of the way first thing in the morning. So, the focus for most people, I think, is on health and wellness first thing in the morning. So the
Yes.
idea is...
And hygiene. Brushing your teeth.
well, right. There's the things that you need to do to get ready to get out of the house or to get started with your day. But,
Yep.
in terms of having if you set aside a little bit of time in the morning, whether it's, if it's an hour, you can look at, I'd read The Miracle Morning, which is a great book, and it talked about the idea of
That has
20-20-20.
revolutionized your...
It has.
your
So
life.
the idea of 20-20-20 is dividing up an hour, and you spend 20 minutes doing some sort of physical activity. So that's how you start your day.
For you, it's yoga.
Then another 20 minutes doing something that is reflective. So that could be meditation or journaling. And then the last 20 minutes, something that's growth related. So it could be, listening to an educational podcast or reading, a personal development book.
Yeah. Because I work overnights, though, I just can't wait to go to sleep. I got no time for
and
yoga.
I mean, everybody has to, but I think the idea is to carve out a chunk of time for
Yeah.
those things that are important in terms of personal growth and development and making sure that you're putting your own health and wellness first.
Yeah.
And, if 20-20-20 doesn't work for you, you can even start with 10-10-10. Get up an extra half hour early.
Yeah.
It means going to sleep a half hour earlier.
That really
but-
has made a big
but put
difference
focus.
in everything. Like, like your productivity for the day, your mood, everything doing things in the morning. Yeah, changes things.
Oh, I love it. I think there's something
Yeah.
satisfying too about seeing a sunrise, and there is a magical time in the morning when that
quiet.
a lot of the world is still asleep, and it's just a time of solitude before the day's
Absolutely.
activities start to crowd your mind. And if you're looking for more tips around a great morning, check out episode 55 of our
yeah.
podcast.
Yes.
Tip number 3 around productivity is just to break up large tasks into smaller steps. A lot of times we'll procrastinate because something will seem incredibly overwhelming. So just take that first step. Even if it's just to list out what
step.
are the steps you need to do to accomplish a major project or putting down a timeline, just break up the larger task into some smaller steps, and that can help, move it closer to being the checked off item on your to-do list. Number 4 is to, once you've sort of identified those important times, is to schedule time in your calendar for those important tasks. So I think a lot of us in an office environment, we're using some form of calendar, whether it's Microsoft Outlook or some other kind of electronic calendar. And a lot of times that calendar is populated with things like meetings and appointments, things that other people dictate, how our time will be spent.
I can barely use a regular calendar. You're always, whenever something comes up, and you're always, well, put it on the calendar. And even then, I rarely do. And
that's just I guess for the listeners to know, it's really just a printout of the month of the calendar. It's writing it on the calendar.
Yeah, it's writing it on the actual paper calendar. That I can't even do. And I mean, not to go on too much of a tangent, but I am so bad with getting the right date for certain events. Actually, all events. I will screw it up somehow. And I don't know how I do that, but it's very consistent. And anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Well,
what's next?
It's good to be vulnerable, honey, and to share your weaknesses.
Yes. I can't use hi, my name's Jeff, and I can't use calendar.
Well, and when I'm talking about scheduling in time, so if you do have sort of an electronic calendar or calendar at work, block off time for those important tasks. If there is a major project you need to move forward, then, block off an hour in your calendar that is going to be dedicated to that, knowing you're going to focus on that item during that period of time. Number 5 is to prepare for meetings. Again, very much in a work environment, but going into a meeting prepared can make all the difference in terms of how productive it will be for you and for the other participants.
How your colleagues see you too, as how efficient you are with your job.
Yes.
Yeah.
But most importantly, it's just a matter of, you personally being productive. So whether you're the meeting organizer and you need to prepare and distribute the agenda before the meeting, or if it's another meeting, somebody else is organized and you're attending, then make sure you review the agenda so that you can have the information on hand. Try to anticipate what will be asked, what will be needed, and, you can walk away confident that you came into that meeting prepared and made the best use of that time. Because a lot of times we can feel completely meetinged out. That definitely can happen. So as an individual, we need to make sure that those meetings are productive for us.
Yeah, I would say too that if someone feels like that they're doing a good job, then their productivity at their work will be they'll be twofold. If they think that they're doing a good job, you're going to work in a much, brighter pace, I feel.
Number 6 is, again, around meetings, but it's scheduling a little bit of time after a meeting. And when I say a little bit of time, it can be as little as 15 minutes. But again, having that blocked off in your calendar, taking the time immediately after a meeting to organize your notes, the action items that came out of the meeting. If you're the meeting organizer, it's a great time to share that information with the other people who may have been participating in the meeting by email, so that everybody's clear on what was discussed.
Minutes, yeah.
Well, I think there's the old school idea of detailed meeting minutes, which were, and oftentimes they definitely serve a purpose in official meetings where documentation is really important and decisions are made during the course of the meeting. But a lot of meetings in the workplace are more informal. So, minutes aren't always taken as consistently with those types of meetings. So when you walk away from that meeting, it's important that everybody is on the same page in terms of what was decided, what are the next steps, so that it wasn't just, a time to discuss and not walk away with, some productivity from having spent that time in a meeting.
On another weird tangent, how did taking notes for a meeting get to be called minutes? Is it because people were just counting the minutes before it was over, or
That's a good guess. I have no idea.
I mean, I just don't.
I have
no
idea.
I don't know how something like that gets to be called minutes. So that's a job for you, loyal listeners,
or Google, perhaps.
Or Google.
I mean, I think the idea of meeting minutes is that they're incredibly detailed, and that the fact that they capture every minute of a meeting and all the things that were discussed. Or maybe it's short for minutia in terms of the amount of detail that's captured from a meeting. I don't know. Those are some of my guesses.
Wow.
I could be very
Better
wrong.
than mine. That's for sure.
Number 7 around productivity is to be not only efficient, but also effective. So efficiency and effectiveness. Do you know the difference between those, Jeff?
Efficiency and being
Effectiveness.
efficient is doing the job in like from A to B as best as you can. That's what I think that means.
Jeff was taking a drink of wine, so I was just checking to see who's actually listening to me.
Yeah,
Or
and
what
then
we're saying. Being
effectiveness is just the direct result of things that you do.
Oh, that's a good definition. So, there's definitely a difference between the two. Efficient is about doing things right.
Mm-hmm.
So, efficiently as possible, as little energy as possible, as quickly as possible,
As
using
in
the least amount of resources as possible. You're doing it efficiently.
A to B, like I said.
Right. And being effective is about doing the right things. So, it's about knowing what you should be working on and doing them in a way that causes effects, right? So you're dead on. And so the idea around that is not only to think about just working efficiently, but make sure that all those tasks that you're doing efficiently are also worth doing, that they're high value tasks.
Don't waste your time and everybody else's time.
What's
the point?
Well, yeah, because
What is the
time
point?
is a finite resource.
Yes, it is. We have to save our planet. Oh wait, that was the other podcast. But still, we still have to save the planet.
Number 8, make a distraction list. So the idea around this is that when we're working on a project or we're focused on a task, oftentimes other things can pop into our head.
Yeah.
Whether it's, ideas for different things, new ideas, or maybe we're just all of a sudden we remembered we have to pay a bill, or, there's an appointment we needed to make.
So make a list of those distractions and then tackle them.
Well, write them down, and then forget about them. So have a list handy.
I could do that easily. I forget the list even.
No, but have like an electronic list or a paper list and jot them down so that you can. So if you're focused on writing a report or working on a major project, or maybe you're just focused on creating a piece of artwork and you really want to be engaged in that task, but you have something that's sort of plaguing your mind about I got to remember to buy milk when I go to the grocery store the next time. Jot it down, and then you can put it out of your head. Because once you've put it down on paper, then you're like, okay, that will be remembered later on. I don't need to think about it now.
Right.
And this also works well for when, like, after work hours in the evening, or maybe when you're trying to fall asleep at night, this may happen. And all of a sudden you're thinking about something. You're like, oh, I got to remember to do this. I have to remember to do that. You can shoot an email to yourself.
Yes, I should start jotting things down to write onto the calendar.
Or you could just write them straight onto the calendar.
Oh, I guess that would work too. Yeah. Okay.
That handy dandy paper calendar that just takes a pen to write onto. Super simple. So make a distraction list, and not just for to-dos, but sometimes we have some great ideas that pop into our head at strange times. We don't want to forget them, so keep an ongoing list.
Have you made a distraction list before?
I have, absolutely.
Do you label it distraction list?
No, but a lot of times I have had, so for instance, if I'm at home and I'm thinking about something for work, I'll send myself an email, knowing I'll see the email in my inbox in the morning and deal with it then, but it gets it out of my head.
You're like, who's this sending me this email?
Who's this Amy McLennan sending me an email?
No, that makes sense, I guess,
I've definitely done that. I've even done some strange things, like say I'm laying in bed and something's in my head and the room is dark and I don't want to forget what it is.
Yeah.
I'll like grab something off the table and throw it into the middle of the floor, like say a book or something like that. Yeah. And then in the morning, I'll know when I see that book in the middle of the floor, I'll be like, oh, I threw that because I needed to remember to book a doctor's appointment. So if I didn't want to get up and write it down. It's a good thing you don't do that
on like a larger scale, Just instead of throwing books, you're like...
If the floor is full of clutter, then I know there's a lot of things that came into my head over the course of the night.
I'm going to scrape the car on the side of this guardrail so that when I get out, I'm going to remember to write on the calendar when I get home,
No, the idea around that is sometimes we are in bed and the lights are off and we're on the edge of sleep and you can't, so I'll do something like that to try to remember.
It's so funny because I am so not a list person. I made lists
only
because I don't want to forget things when I go grocery shopping. And aside from the fact that I usually forget the actual list, which we talked about earlier. I'm okay having a list in my head. I usually keep it straight. I usually do, unless it's a date or something like that. And then, I screw that up. But honestly, all of my lists are just up in my head. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, I have too much or too little room in my head for a list. I need to write this stuff down, right?
Well, no, I think it's just, I think when we try to hold a list in our mind, it takes emotional energy.
That made it sound so awful because it made it sound like you have a small mind, but you don't. You just have
I know,
you
that's
just
what
think
you
about
meant.
a lot more things than I do throughout the course of a day, I would say. Yes, definitely you do. So,
No,
you
I
know,
think when you try to remember things, memorize lists, it does take mental energy
That's
that you
true.
could be directing elsewhere. So just, making it more manual, just putting it down somewhere that you can read later.
maybe as an experiment, I will take a week of my life, and if there's tasks that I need to do, I will make a list and do it and see if I have more room in my head.
Well,
for
and if you're
other
like me,
thoughts.
everybody operates differently, but for me, once I write something down, I've committed it to memory. That's part of how I've
Yes.
learned that my memory works. So often in meetings, I'll take notes, but I'll never need to look at my meeting notes again because once I've gone through the act of writing them down on paper, just like taking notes when I was in lectures in university, that commits them to memory for me.
For
But I
me-
mean, that's part of just knowing how your own memory works. and
Using
how
the
your own
example of
productivity
taking
works.
notes in university, the way it worked for me was that I took the notes, but that didn't make me remember it at all in any capacity more than just hearing somebody speak it. Like it just was like I had to actually take what I wrote and study it in order to remember any of it.
Well, and I mean,
Any of
everybody operates differently, right? There are people
Yeah.
who need to hear the thing, people who need to see the thing,
Yeah.
people who need to just write down the thing.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of just knowing what your own personal style is, your own learning style, your own way to remember things, and
Right.
working with that. Number 9, in terms of tips, is to evaluate your tasks and then treat them accordingly. So there's this idea of Dwight Eisenhower came up with the Eisenhower Matrix, and it's mentioned in Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is another great resource for, productivity habits. But the idea is to look at every task and decide the level of urgency and also the
That makes
level
sense.
of importance.
That makes sense.
So
So
the
how do you
idea is,
categorize that? Oh, okay.
well, the idea is that you basically create a matrix, and there's 4 quadrants. So if something is urgent and important, that needs to be done. So that gets at the top of your to-do list.
Right.
And, you get it done quickly. If it's important but it's not so urgent, well, you need to plan for it. So maybe you put it in your calendar, write it down on a task
Do you do
list
this?
and you plan for it.
I'm just curious, do you do this for like importance of whatever email that you are receiving? Like do you
Yeah,
have, like,
absolutely. I mean,
a
I don't
folder
necessarily
for-
write it down through in a matrix, but I definitely go through the process of determining whether it's urgent and important.
And then you place it accordingly?
No, I don't do them in a
Okay,
folder, but
I
just
got
in
you.
how I
Yeah.
deal with them.
Okay.
So
cool.
then, in terms of the third quadrant, so if you looked at something and it was urgent but not important, that may be something you can delegate to somebody else to do.
Yeah.
And then lastly, if it's not urgent and it's not important, well, it's maybe not worth doing and you can eliminate it. So,
Yes.
consider that not all tasks that fall into our inbox or that are directed toward us necessarily have a level of importance that need to be addressed.
You don't
straight
save
away
every
or even
single
at all.
email you receive, right? But that's not spam, of course. Like you don't, you know what I mean? Like if you,
Well, if you're my IT department wondering about my capacity of electronic storage, then the answer is no, I don't. But for everybody else, yes, I do tend to save all my emails, and I have them in folders, and they're highly searchable. So I find that's an
that's
easy way to
really
stay
cool.
organized.
I just leave them as they come, and I only delete the ones that are just spam, and I just keep everything. And I have no idea why, because a lot of them are just like,
Oh no! See, I treat my
Pointless.
inbox as my to-do list. So if
Okay,
it's in my
that's-
inbox, it requires action,
yes, okay.
and then I file it away once it's been actioned. But I need it for future reference. I'll
Oh.
file it away.
So
But
do you have
definitely
a lot
my
of different
inbox requires
folders?
action.
Do you have a lot of different folders?
Absolutely,
Okay,
yes.
yeah. So
Yeah,
like
definitely.
and folders for like people's names and like
No,
all
not
the-
by people's names. Usually by topics and
Oh,
subjects.
okay, that's
Depending on the nature of your work, your folder structure may look differently. But
Yeah.
we could do a whole podcast episode just on emails.
Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe we should.
But
It sounds fascinating. Everybody emails.
But in this episode, we're going to talk about habits of highly productive people. And I'm going to go to number 10, which is to automate decisions. So this is just a time-saving thing. And
We have to do 6 more in like
I know.
5 minutes, so I'll shut up. Let me go.
Automate decisions is just around the idea of automate anything you possibly can, whether it's, what you're going to wear, what you're going to eat, having meal plans at the beginning of the week so that everything is sort of planned out and you can save that decision-making capacity for, more productive things that come up throughout the day.
We do have a decision-making quota. We do. Like,
We
there's
do.
only so many decisions.
You definitely get decision fatigue late in the day. And,
Yes,
and
I
when
can
you're
remember,
in a demanding environment, it can...
just saying like, where do you want to go for supper? And you're like, I am out of decisions, you choose, and I'm like, okay, I will. Because I've got lots more decisions
When I would
to
do
make.
major events and that sort of thing, and you're, sort of putting out fires all day long, you would go through...
You're just exhausted.
You're dealing with a lot of decisions, and then at the end of the day, you do definitely get decision fatigue. Number 11 is to say no. Say no to some items. There are things that are just time wasters or things that just don't contribute to your overall career path or to your personal growth or to your goals.
Just say no. You don't be afraid to say no.
Don't be afraid to say no. If there's a meeting or an engagement or an appointment that you're invited to that you think maybe I could do that by email or that can just be a phone call or I don't even really need to be there at all, say
You're
that.
stretched too tight for time. I can't do it. Sorry.
So say no, and you don't need to be apologetic about it.
Mm-hmm.
Number 12, increase your typing speed. It's interesting, today's day and age, there's still a lot of two-fingered typers. And when we think about the amount of correspondence in an office environment we're doing by email or reports and different written correspondence we're doing, decreasing your typing speed, it sounds so simple, but can really contribute to
I'm
productivity
a pretty fast
overall.
typer for 2 fingers, I got to say.
Well, yeah, there's a lot.
Not as fast as you.
There are a lot of people who type with 2 fingers and are very fast, but you can always get better. And there's even games out there that you can play online to increase your typing speed. So you may find it's something that's worth investing in.
Here's the little info to quench your appetite: is Amy can type without looking. Just saying, go. Next.
Well, I think anybody who's sort of learned basic typing skills can do that.
It's like you're a magician every time you do it. When I see it, it's just like wow.
Well, it's a
She'll
skill.
look at you and
it's
type.
a skill that you take a short amount of time to learn, and then it serves you throughout your lifetime. And it's definitely helps for productivity.
You did that for my. I'm not going to go on too much of a tangent, but the typing for my.
Because I got 3 minutes and 4 tips to go through.
Okay, go.
Avoid email ping pong. If you're sending out emails or messages to friends, or and you're trying to figure out dates for things, give people the options. And let them pick, and be concise, be specific, set an exact time.
I need to know by this time.
Yeah, don't go do a bunch of back and forth.
What do you think?
Trying to
I don't know. What do you
out.
think? Well, I don't think they can.
Say,
make it.
are you free at Monday at 1 or Wednesday at 2? If not, suggest another time. Rather than say, are you free sometime next week? And then go back and forth and back and forth.
When are you free? Answer
avoid
now.
that ping pong. Number 14 is under promise and over deliver. I think this is just a good practice in business environment and personal environment.
Didn't Dale Carnegie have the same? He may have. I don't know.
I don't know. But I mean, the idea is just around, we tend to underestimate the amount of time it takes to do something. Err on the side of caution, overestimate that. And that way you have a little bit more integrity in terms of keeping your word. And you can schedule your time to optimize your productivity and make sure that you do tasks in the most effective way and efficient way possible.
Wow.
Number 15 is to avoid multitasking whenever possible. So having focus on one task at a time can give you a higher quality product.
One day at a time.
And if you're not you don't end up revisiting the same thing, rediscussing it, rereading it, and ending up having a lot of half-finished tasks rather than having checked off a few boxes of those important things. Having a tidy desk too can help with that, idea of not multitasking. Clear your desk, work on the one thing, and turn off notifications when you can, and for electronic notifications for emails and things, and just stay focused. And number 16 is sharpen the axe. There's a quote that's often attributed to Abraham Lincoln that says, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." So this can be interpreted in a few ways, but one way is just, spend time learning and becoming more knowledgeable in the work that you do so that you can become more efficient. And also spend time planning your approach to a task to make sure that you're clear on the objectives, that you're not doing rework, and that you're doing things as effectively as possible. So
now, loyal listeners, if you have things to do, you have ways to categorize all those things you need to do and go out and do them.
Right. And if it seemed rushed at the end of this podcast, Jeff is fully to blame for the myriad of tangents that he brought us.
I am, and I apologize. But I hope it was a little bit entertaining and you enjoyed this podcast.
Someday I'll learn my lesson around numbered lists. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening.
And remember, you can catch up on past episodes at infoquench.com.
Or just about anywhere else you get your podcasts.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
And help spread the word about InfoQuench.
Till next time.